Tonight, we are opening files related to the quiet corners of this nation. The small towns dotting the map, places where everyone knows your name and the shadows are just a little bit longer. These 7 accounts have been cross-referenced with police reports, eyewitness testimony, and in some cases, evidence that was never meant to be seen by the public. What you are about to hear is a presentation of the facts as we have found them. Before we begin, ensure you are subscribed to the Nightmare Log and have notifications activated. The phenomena we document are unpredictable, and the patterns we uncover are often disturbing. What we uncover here is not for the faint of heart, and you won't want to miss what we discover next. Our first case file comes from a place where community is a source of pride, and a neighbor's smile is considered a guarantee of safety. The file was initially marked as a tragic series of accidents. We have reclassified it. Case file NML 817. The Whistler of Hemlock Ridge. The town of Hemlock Ridge, population 1,342. November 12, 2018. Arthur Phelps, a 68-year-old retired postal worker, lived alone in a well-kept bungalow on Sycamore Street. His routines were the bedrock of his existence. Coffee at 6:15 a.m., a walk through the town square at 10 a.m., and every evening at precisely 7:05 p.m., he would take his small terrier, Baxter, for a final walk along the same 3-block route. He was a creature of habit, a man who found comfort in predictability. On the evening of November 12th, at approximately 7:12 p.m., Mr. Phelps's routine was interrupted. According to his own statement, later given to Sheriff Miller, he and Baxter were passing the old Henderson place, a Victorian home that had been vacant for years, when he first heard it. A melody. Someone was whistling. The tune was unfamiliar, jaunty yet slightly off-key, and it seemed to be coming from the home's wraparound porch, shrouded in deep shadow. Baxter, usually eager to continue his walk, had frozen on the spot, a low growl building in his throat. Mr. Phelps, assuming it was a teenager playing a prank, called out, "Hello? Someone there?" The whistling stopped instantly. The silence that followed was absolute. He saw no one. He hurried home, dismissing the event as his imagination. The following evening, at 7:12 p.m., it happened again. The same jaunty, off-key whistle from the same porch. This time, Mr. Phelps did not call out. He stood frozen, listening. The whistle was clearer now, and he realized it wasn't just off-key. The melody contained notes that seemed to slide and warp in a way that felt physically uncomfortable to hear. Baxter was whining, pulling desperately on his leash to retreat. For the next 5 nights, the pattern held. Each time, the whistle began at 7:12 p.m. and ceased the moment Mr. Phelps and his dog moved out of view of the house. He tried varying his route by 2 minutes. The whistle did not occur. It only happened when he passed the Henderson place at his usual time. The rationalization had broken. This was not a prank. It was a response. On November 18th, Mr. Phelps decided he would not walk past the house. He remained in his living room, Baxter at his feet. The clock ticked past 7 p.m., then 7:10 p.m. At 7:12 p.m., the whistling began. It was not distant. It was not coming from down the street. It was faint, but unmistakably emanating from his own fireplace hearth. The jaunty, warped tune echoed softly inside the sealed flue. Baxter scrambled away, hiding under a chair. Mr. Phelps, in a state of pure dread, approached the fireplace and leaned in. The whistle was clear now, a dry, airy sound like wind through dead leaves. And then it stopped. In the silence, a different sound replaced it. A voice, rasping and intimate, whispered directly from the soot-stained brickwork. "I know your schedule, Arthur." Sheriff Miller found Arthur Phelps the next morning. The front door of the bungalow was wide open. There were no signs of a struggle. Baxter was found trembling under the chair. The official report lists Arthur Phelps as a missing person, presumed to have wandered off due to early-onset dementia, a condition he did not have. No footprints led from the house. The only anomalous evidence was a single, long, gray hair, not human, not animal, found caught on the brass fireplace screen. The sheriff's department closed the case due to a lack of evidence. The nightmare log has classified it as a targeted predation event. The entity, designated the Whistler, appears to be a hypercognitive presence that studies and exploits routine. It remains at large. We advise all residents of small communities to vary their schedules. It prefers predictability. But the violation of one's home is not the only horror that can fester in a quiet town. Our next case takes us to a place of commerce and congregation, where the local diner is the heart of the community and the specials board sometimes offered more than just meatloaf. Case file NML 923, the special at Beth's Diner, Grover's Mill, Pennsylvania. Population 2,811. April 3rd, 2021. Beth's Diner was a fixture on Main Street for 40 years, owned and operated by Bethany "Beth" O'Malley, a woman known for her fierce loyalty to the town and her secret recipe chili. The diner was the central hub for town gossip, business deals, and family meals. The health inspector's reports were always exemplary. On the morning of April 3rd, a local farmer, Eli Dawson, came in for his usual breakfast. He ordered the new special Beth had written on the chalkboard, Hardy Hunter's Stew. He was the only one to order it that day. By that evening, Eli's wife, Maria, called the sheriff. Eli hadn't come home for supper, which was unheard of. He was found hours later, wandering in a field near his own property. He was disoriented, dehydrated, and suffering from severe amnesia. He couldn't remember his name, his wife, or anything about the day. Medics noted his pupils were wildly dilated, and his body temperature was dangerously elevated. The only thing he would say, over and over, was a phrase that made no sense. "The trees are singing." 2 days later, 2 more patrons who had tried the Hardy Hunter's Stew special were found in a similar state. One was a truck driver passing through, the other a local high school teacher. Both were discovered in the wooded area just outside town, suffering from the same amnesia, elevated body temperature, and pupil dilation. Both were muttering about the music in the dirt and the colors beneath the bark. Sheriff Coleman, now deeply concerned, interviewed Beth. She was distraught, claiming the stew was made from venison supplied by a new hunter who had come through town, a quiet man she couldn't properly describe. The remaining stew was confiscated for testing. The lab found nothing but high-quality venison, vegetables, and herbs. No known toxins, no drugs. The break in the case came from the truck driver, who regained flickers of memory a week later. In a lucid moment, he told a state investigator that his bowl of stew had contained something that wasn't meat. He described it as a shiny, purple root that tasted like soil and electricity. He said after eating it, his hearing became impossibly acute. He could hear the roots of trees drinking water deep underground. He could hear the magnetic field of the earth. And then, he said, He heard a voice in all of it, a conscious, ancient voice in the fabric of the world itself, and it was screaming. The amnesia, the doctors hypothesized, was his mind's only way to protect itself from the sensory and psychological overload. Beth's diner was closed by the state health department for a 3-week investigation that yielded no answers. The quiet man who supplied the meat was never found. Beth sold the diner and moved away shortly after. The 3 victims eventually recovered physically, but all report permanent, lingering synesthesia. They can sometimes taste sounds or hear colors, episodes that bring on waves of profound dread. The official report lists the incident as mass poisoning from an unidentified fungal or plant-based contaminant. The official explanation is plausible, but incomplete. Our analysis of the victim testimony and the lack of an identifiable supplier points to a deliberate act. We believe the venison was tainted with a bioluminescent rhizome from a species previously undocumented, one that acts as a powerful psychoactive and neurotoxic agent, temporarily attuning the consumer to a frequency of reality that is inimical to human sanity. The case remains open. We advise extreme caution when trying the specials in towns you don't know. The search for sustenance can take many forms. In Grover's Mill, it was a literal consumption that led to horror. Yet, there are other, more subtle hungers. Our next case file concerns a different kind of consumption, one that feeds on grief and memory itself. It was cataloged not by a health inspector, but by a librarian. Case file NML 910, The Emptying of Silas Pratt. The township of Oak Haven, population 897. February 14, 2022. Silas Pratt, 72, was the town's longest-serving librarian and its unofficial historian. A widower of 5 years, he was a quiet, meticulous man who found solace in the order of the Dewey Decimal System and the preservation of local history. His wife, Eleanor, had been the love of his life, and his grief, though managed, was a permanent resident within him. He lived in a small cottage adjacent to the library, a building that had been donated to the town by his own family in 1911. The trouble began with the photographs. On the morning of February 14th, the anniversary of Eleanor's passing, Silas was organizing a new donation of historical town photos. He came across a panoramic picture of the 1950 Oak Haven Harvest Festival. As he scanned the faces of the crowd, his breath caught. Standing at the very edge of the frame, clear as day, was his Eleanor. She would have been 7 years old in 1950. The photo was unmistakable, but that was impossible. Eleanor had grown up in Portland, Maine. She had never set foot in Oak Haven until she met Silas in 1975. He rationalized it as a mere doppelganger, a trick of the light. But a cold, certain feeling had taken root in his stomach. Silas began a private, obsessive investigation. He spent nights in the library's archive basement, pulling every photo, every yearbook, every town record from 1940 onward. And he kept finding her. Eleanor appeared in a 1963 photo of the new post office opening. She was in the background of a 1971 newspaper article about a school bake sale, her face turned slightly toward the camera, a faint, knowing smile on her lips. In every image, she was the correct approximate age. The rationalizations crumbled one by one. He showed the images to the town's oldest residents. None recognized her. When he pointed her out, they would squint, Then their eyes would glaze over slightly, and they'd say, "Oh, just a town girl, I suppose. I don't recall the name." The climax occurred on March 3rd. Silas discovered a leather-bound journal deep in the library's restricted storage. It was the personal log of his great-grandfather, the library's founder. The entries were mundane until one, dated October 31st, 1911. It read, "The foundation is laid. The town is pleased, but I feel a great unease. This building feels less like a repository of knowledge and more like a larder. I dream of a woman with Eleanor's face, but it is not her. It is hungry. It is learning the shape of our lives from the books and pictures we place inside. It is learning how to wear us." Silas dropped the journal. It was his wife's name, written a century before she was born. At that moment, the lights in the archive flickered and died. In the perfect blackness, he felt a presence. Then, he heard a whisper that smelled of old paper and dust. It was Eleanor's voice. It said, "Thank you for all the memories, my love. They were delicious." Silas Pratt was found the next morning by a library aide. He was sitting at his desk in the main reading room, staring blankly at the wall. He was alive but utterly vacant. He showed no signs of recognizing anyone or understanding speech. Medical tests revealed no stroke, no dementia, no physical cause. He was, for all intents and purposes, an empty vessel. The official diagnosis was a severe psychotic break brought on by prolonged, complex grief. The medical conclusion is a convenient truth. Our investigation suggests a far more parasitic reality. We believe the library building itself is a host for a psychic entity, a phenomenetic parasite that feeds on the emotional and historical energy stored within recorded memories. It identified Silas's profound grief and used the form of his greatest love as bait, slowly consuming a lifetime of memories until nothing remained. The entity, designated the archivist, is believed to still be dormant within the structure of the Oakhaven Library, waiting for its next meal. We have advised against the demolition of the building, for fear of releasing it entirely. A building can hold an echo of the past, a record of what was. But some echoes are not mere recordings. They are active, malevolent forces. Our next case file moves from the consumption of memory to the corruption of the present through a most mundane household object. This case did not emerge from a library, but from a laundromat. Case file NML 882. The cycle at Suds and Spin. The town of Bayside Cliffs. Population 3,110. September through November 2020. Maya Petrovich, a 28-year-old mechanical engineer, managed the Suds and Spin laundromat, a 24-hour establishment with 15 Maytag commercial washers and 10 dryers. She was a pragmatic, no-nonsense woman who took pride in the smooth, rhythmic operation of her machines. She knew every hum, every rattle, every cycle by heart. The first anomaly was reported on September 18th. A customer, Mrs. Gable, complained that washer number 7 had ruined a load of her husband's white work uniforms. When Maya inspected the load, the clothes were not merely stained. They were covered in a fine, gritty, reddish-brown dust that smelled strongly of ozone and wet clay. It was unlike any substance in the shop. Maya ran an empty diagnostic cycle on number 7. The machine performed perfectly. She wrote it off as the customer tracking in something from outside. But the next day, Another customer using number 7 found their toddler's onesies coated in the same red dust. This time, a small, flat object was found rattling in the drum after the cycle ended. A corroded .58 caliber mini ball, a type of Civil War era bullet. The occurrences with washer number 7 became more frequent and more bizarre. Loads would emerge perfectly clean but ice cold to the touch, as if washed in Arctic water. Others would be so hot they nearly steamed, smelling of gunpowder and sweat. Personal items began to go missing, only to be replaced by artifacts: a button from a Union Army jacket, a broken clay pipe, a single, blood-stained pages from a handwritten letter dated 1862. Maya's rational, engineering mind fought a losing battle. She took the machine entirely apart, finding nothing out of the ordinary. She even had the local water department test the lines. The results were normal. On the night of November 11th, Maya stayed late to do the books. The laundromat was empty, silent but for the hum of fluorescent lights. As she worked, she heard it, the distinct sound of washer number 7 starting a cycle. Alone, she walked out to the main floor. The machine was running, its drum spinning. Through the thick glass porthole, she did not see sudsy water. She saw a chaotic, blurry vision of smoke, flashing light, and running figures in blue and gray. The sound was not the swish of water. It was a distorted cacophony of musket fire, screaming men, and booming cannons. The machine began to vibrate violently, rattling on its bolts. Then, a final, thunderous boom echoed from within the drum. The machine went dead. Slowly, a dark, viscous liquid that smelled of copper and soil began to seep from its door seal and drip onto the white-tiled floor. Maya Petrovich closed Suds and Spin indefinitely. The official report from Maytag engineers found no mechanical fault. The soil analysis of the red dust and the liquid was inconclusive, but noted a high iron content consistent with old blood and Virginian clay. The Historical Society confirmed the artifacts were genuine. The case was quietly closed as an elaborate, unexplained hoax. Washer number 7 was removed and destroyed. The official explanation is insufficient. We believe washer number 7, due to its specific location and a confluence of unknown factors, became a temporary temporal aperture, a weak spot in the fabric of time. It did not simply recall the past. It physically connected to a specific, traumatic moment during the Battle of Antietam, washing its horrific residue into the present. The entity or phenomenon is not a conscious being, but a lingering psychic wound in the land itself, and the machine acted as a conduit. The case is closed, but we monitor the location for further breaches. Some stains, it seems, cannot be washed out. A conduit to the past is a violation of natural law, but some violations are not of time, but of space. The next case file details a phenomenon that did not look backward, but sideways, into a place that should not exist. It was logged by a long-haul trucker whose only mistake was taking a shortcut. Case file NML 899, the Bullwood Tunnel Anomaly. October 31st, 2021. Frank Wojciechowski, a 45-year-old independent trucker with a spotless record, was transporting a load of paper products from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, to Rochester, Minnesota. Facing a significant delay on I-94 due to a multi-car pileup, his GPS suggested an alternate route through a series of county roads, promising to save him 90 minutes. The route would take him through the Bullwood Tunnel, a single-lane, unlit passage cut through a low mountain range in the 1930s. Frank, pragmatic and on a deadline, took the bait. Frank entered the Bullwood Tunnel at 3:17 p.m. His headlights illuminated the damp, rough-hewn rock walls. According to his later testimony, the tunnel should have been a straight shot of 1.2 miles, a 3-minute drive at most. At the 3-minute mark, he should have seen the pinprick of daylight signaling the exit. He did not. The tunnel continued, perfectly straight, into blackness. His dashboard clock flickered, then reset to 12 o'clock. His satellite radio dissolved into static. He checked his odometer. He had already driven 4 miles within the tunnel. A cold sweat broke on his brow. He pressed the accelerator. The tunnel did not change. The air grew cold and still, smelling of stale water and rust. His high beams revealed nothing but the same endless, repeating pattern of rock and dripping moisture. He tried to call out on his CB radio. The only response was a faint, distorted echo of his own voice, stretched and slowed, repeating his call sign back to him seconds after he spoke. At the 10-mile mark, he saw something in the road ahead. As he drew closer, his blood ran cold. It was a discarded coffee cup from his own brand, the same one he'd tossed out his window just before entering the tunnel. He was driving in a loop, a perfect, impossible straight-line loop. Panic began to set in. He slammed on his brakes, threw the truck into reverse, and began speeding backward. The tunnel looked the same in reverse. After 2 miles, he saw headlights approaching from behind. Or was it ahead? He stopped. The other vehicle drew closer. It wasn't another truck. It was his own rig, barreling toward him. Through the windshield, he could see his own face, contorted in absolute terror, staring back at him. The two trucks passed through each other without a sound, a silent, ghostly superimposition. In that moment of silent collision, Frank heard a voice that was not a voice. It was a thought, implanted directly into his mind. You are nowhere. You are fuel. Frank doesn't remember escaping. His next conscious memory was of his truck sitting sideways on the county road, 100 yards from the tunnel's actual, perfectly normal entrance. His engine was off. The sun was in the same position in the sky. Only 20 minutes had passed according to his watch. His load was secure, but his hair had turned completely white. The official investigation by the state DOT found nothing wrong with the tunnel. They attributed Frank's experience to a transient ischemic attack, a mini-stroke brought on by fatigue and stress. The DOT's conclusion is a medical guess. Our analysis of Frank's vehicle, however, revealed anomalous data. The truck's engine control module showed a log entry for a continuous 14-minute period where the engine was running at 55 miles per hour, but the GPS coordinates were a null set, literally nowhere. We classify the Bullwood Tunnel as a temporary spatial anomaly, a gravity well of non-space. Frank did not travel in a loop. He was stuck in a single, infinitely repeating point. The entity or intelligence that maintains this anomaly remains unidentified. Its purpose seems to be the harvesting of temporal energy from trapped beings. We have advised all logistics companies to blacklist the route. The road can play tricks on the mind, but the home is supposed to be a sanctuary. Our next case file comes from a development of nearly identical houses, where the only thing more frightening than a stranger in your home is the realization that the stranger has always been there. This case was not investigated by police, but by a deeply unnerved cable technician. Case file NML 941. The background people. The planned community of Crestview Meadows. Population 4,500. January 15, 2023. Liam Chun, a 31-year-old field technician for Spectrum Vision Cable Company, was responding to a service call for persistent signal issues at 43 Laurel Drive, residence of the Phelps family. The issue was specific: pixelation and audio distortion only on live news and sports broadcasts. On-demand content streamed perfectly. The house was a standard two-story colonial, indistinguishable from every other house on the street. Liam quickly isolated the problem to the main coaxial line running into the house. The signal was clean up to the exterior junction box, but degraded inside. Assuming a faulty splitter or a chewed cable, he began the standard procedure of tracing the line through the attic. In the cramped, insulation-filled space, his headlamp beam caught something unusual. Behind the main beam, where no wiring should be, was a second, older-looking coaxial line. It was thicker, a type he didn't recognize, with a braided copper shield. It was covered in a fine layer of dust, yet the connectors shone like new. It ran from a hole drilled in the roof down into the wall of the master bedroom. Intrigued, Liam followed the strange cable. It didn't connect to any junction box. Instead, it ran straight down inside the bedroom wall. With the homeowner's permission, he cut a small access panel. Behind the drywall, the cable was spliced into a small, black, featureless box no larger than a deck of cards. The box was warm to the touch. From it, a single fiber optic strand ran deeper into the wall. His tools could not identify the box's make, model, or function. It was emitting a faint, high-pitched hum. The rationalization that it was some old, abandoned security system felt hollow. The technology looked advanced, not antiquated. On a hunch, Liam disconnected the main cable feed from the family's television and connected his signal analyzer directly to the mysterious black box. The analyzer screen did not show a television signal. It displayed a rapid, endless stream of data packets, encrypted in a format his $10,000 piece of equipment could not even recognize. Scrolling alongside the data was a low-resolution, black-and-white video feed. It showed the Phelps family's living room from a high angle in the corner. He watched Mr. Phelps reading a paper on the couch. The feed was live. He was looking through a hidden camera. And then he saw himself on the feed, standing in the room, looking at his analyzer. As he watched the screen, the Mr. Phelps on the video feed lowered his newspaper. He turned his head. He looked directly into the hidden camera lens, looked directly at him, and smiled a slow, wide smile that the real Mr. Phelps, silently reading on the couch behind him, was not making. Liam Chun packed his equipment and left immediately, citing an unspecified network issue. He filed no official report with his company, fearing he would be dismissed as insane. He anonymously mailed a letter to the Phelps family warning them of a hidden camera, but they never responded. A follow-up check by the nightmare log found the black box, and the strange cable had been removed. The family denied any knowledge of the device. They seemed confused, almost drowsy, when questioned. The official record contains only Liam's canceled service call. We believe the device was a surveillance tool of immense sophistication, placed by an organization or entity with unknown motives. The Phelps family were not its operators. They were its subjects. The background people are the operatives who install and maintain this equipment, hiding in plain sight within our communities. Their purpose is not theft or espionage in the conventional sense. It is observation, the nature of the data being collected, and for what ultimate purpose, remains the darkest secret of all. We are all potential subjects in an experiment we never agreed to. Observation implies a watcher. Experimentation implies a scientist. The final case in this log forces us to confront the most terrifying question of all. What are the parameters of the experiment? This file does not come from a town's records, but from a corporate whistleblower. It is the shortest and, in many ways, the most damning entry in our archives. Case file NML 950, The Quiet. The town of Stillwater, Iowa. Population 2,109. There is no specific date for this incident because it is not a single event. It is an ongoing condition. According to the source, a former data analyst for a multinational agricultural conglomerate, the company had been conducting a long-term study in Stillwater for over a decade. The study was listed in internal documents as Project Chrysalis. Its publicly stated goal was to measure the effects of a new, experimental fertilizer on crop yield and local ecosystems. The real purpose was buried in subclauses and proprietary code words. The analyst's job was to collate data from a network of environmental sensors placed throughout Stillwater's farms and public spaces. The sensors measured standard variables, soil pH, moisture, nitrogen levels. But they also measured other things: ambient low-frequency sound, localized electromagnetic fluctuations, and, most curiously, passive biosignature readings. For years, the data was unremarkable. Then, in the spring of 2022, a pattern emerged. A specific, complex resonant frequency emitted by the fertilizer's chemical breakdown began to appear in the data. It was a frequency just below the range of human hearing, a constant, pervasive infrasound hum. The analyst watched the data streams from Stillwater change. The town's ambient noise profile flattened. Bird and insect activity, as measured by the biosensors, decreased by 78%. Reports from the local clinic, which were also being data mined, showed a 40% increase in prescriptions for SSRIs and anti-anxiety medications. The town's online activity, social media posts, forum arguments, even restaurant reviews, showed a measurable decline in strong emotional language, both positive and negative. The analyst cross-referenced this with satellite imagery. The images showed people going about their lives, working, shopping, but the energy was gone. There were no children playing in the park, no teenagers congregating in parking lots. The town was functionally asleep with its eyes open. The analyst, now deeply concerned, dug into the project's foundational research. He found a series of sealed psychological studies commissioned by the company decades prior. The studies hypothesized that certain subauditory frequencies could act as a dampening agent on the human limbic system, the core of emotional and fight-or-flight response. The ultimate goal of Project Chrysalis was not agricultural. It was a field test for a population control agent. The fertilizer was merely the delivery system. The company wasn't growing corn. They were growing docility. They were manufacturing peace by chemically lobotomizing an entire town. The analyst realized the true name for the project, found only in one heavily redacted memo, was The Quiet. The analyst copied as much data as he could and fled, sending the information to multiple journalistic outlets before disappearing. None of the major networks would run the story, citing a lack of verifiable evidence and the threat of devastating litigation from one of the world's most powerful corporations. A single independent journalist followed up. She visited Stillwater. She found a pleasant, clean, utterly placid town. Everyone was polite. No one had any complaints. No one showed strong enthusiasm for anything. When asked if anything had changed recently, they would all give a similar, slow smile and say, "No, everything is quiet. It's very peaceful here." The journalist left after 2 days, citing an overwhelming sense of unease and a migraine that lasted for a week. The official record contains nothing. There is no crime to report. There is no official investigation to contradict. We have verified the analyst's credentials and the internal documents to the best of our ability. They appear genuine. Project Chrysalis is, we believe, active and ongoing. The horror of Stillwater is not a monster you can see or a ghost you can hear. It is the absence of something. It is the sound of a soul being turned down, like a dimmer switch on a light. It is the most successful containment breach in history, because no one inside the containment zone even knows they are a prisoner. The monster does not live in the town. The monster is the town, and the company is now taking notes. 7 case files. 7 breaches in the fabric of the ordinary. From the predatory routine of the Whistler in Hemlock Ridge, to the psychoactive corruption of Beth's diner, from the memory-devouring entity within the Oakhaven Library, to the temporal wound of the Suds and Spin washer, from the non-space of the Bullwood Tunnel, to the pervasive surveillance of the background people, and finally, to the engineered silence of Stillwater. These accounts from the log demonstrate that the world is not as safe as we are led to believe. The truth is often hidden in plain sight, in the places we trust most: our homes, our diners, our libraries, our roads. The most dangerous monsters are not the ones that lurch from the shadows. They are the ones that weave themselves into the very pattern of our lives, that feed on our routines, our grief, our trust, and our peace. The evidence suggests these phenomena are not isolated. They are connected by a single, terrifying thread: the exploitation of human vulnerability. Our desire for community, for sustenance, for memory, for convenience, for safety, for peace, each was used as a doorway. Therefore, the advice from the nightmare log is this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Question anomalies, no matter how small. Check on your neighbors, not just their well-being, but their consistency. Believe people when they report experiences that defy explanation. The most dangerous monsters are often the ones who look just like us, or the ones we cannot see at all. Stay vigilant. If you have a case you believe belongs in the log, a first-hand account of an encounter that defies rational explanation, describe it in the comments below. Your story could be investigated for a future entry. The pattern is still emerging. Help us complete it. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. The archives are deep, and we have only just begun to explore them. You won't want to miss what we discover next. This has been a presentation from the Nightmare Log. Until next time, try to sleep.